I am so excited. We are finally getting to the meat here. Welcome to Answers in 2nd Esdras, the hidden book of prophecy. And Ezra is about to nail down the final world empire in its true hidden powers of the three eagle heads. Now, we go for it. The great head rises and falls. And this has happened already, folks. This empire is unmistakable, and this really serves to affirm the previous videos and set the stage for the next, really narrowing down the options. It can't really be any other. Ezra nailed this down with specifics that really leave no room for debate. This is gonna make your toes curl. Let's identify the great head now. Open your book of 2nd Esdras to chapter 11, verse 13. This is a quick review for foundation, but necessary. We'll make this part quick. And so it was that when it rained, the first wing, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up and reigned, and had a great time. Now the Bible uses the word great in largest, or in this case, longest lasting. And Ezra will confirm this, as does history. 14. And it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Then came there a voice unto it, and said, that's the prince demon from inside the body who is orchestrating all of this, as we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers of darkness, right? Remember this, the people who live within this empire are not the demon. That's just illiterate talk. Most of them have no idea what is going on, and they have no say in the decision. I know we hear, it's a democracy. There is no such thing as demon democracy. Get that. Even the rulers are possessed, indeed, as many are psychopaths. Clearly, just look at their actions. You know their fruits, and you judge them by their fruits. And some, even perhaps Nephilim bloodlines, even in their own claims. But they are not actually in control here either. They follow this prince demon and his wishes, not their own. So remember that in context. 16. Here, you that has borne rule over the earth so long. That's a voice from within side. This is the longest lasting of the eagle empires, and you'll see. This I say unto you, before you begin to appear no more. Now, there shall none after you attain unto your time, neither unto the half thereof. Now let's math this out quickly. The longest lasting empire under this new Roman Empire, iron mixed with miry clay, since Rome fell, is the Byzantine Empire, which lasted 1,058 years according to most historians. Anybody can debate, oh no, it was 1,062 years. No, it was 1,059.956725725. Who cares? It's good enough. So half of that is all any of these heads moving forward can achieve in time, or other empires for that matter, as they reign. So this is actually extremely accurate. Let's catch up. We covered Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream and Daniel's four beasts. We arrive at Babylon as the beginning of this world empire rise as the head of gold and the winged lion. Medo-Persia is the bear and breast and arms of silver. The Greek Empire, the belly and thighs of brass, the leopard. And Rome, the legs of iron. In 324 AD, the Roman Empire morphed into something else, iron mixed with miry clay, moving its capital even to Turkey, where the seat of Satan is. That is miry clay, baby. And the synagogue of Satan was empowered and rose. That's really indisputable. Now, that's Ezra's first wing, and the second rose out of that, reigning. the longest, over 1,000 years, exactly as Ezra predicted, the Byzantine Empire. Now this brings us to the year 1453. There's not a single year lapse in these prophecies thus far. Notice that. There won't be moving forward either. So what happened then in 1453? Well, let's read, and Ezra will even tell us with specifics that cannot really be debated. 2 Esdras 11:29. And when they so thought, behold, there awaked one of the heads that were at rest, the three hidden powers. Namely, that was in the middle. For that was greater than the two other heads. So we're looking for the largest empire in history, which actually is not just the largest in these dates even, but really actually turns out to be the largest ever. And then I saw that the two other heads were joined with it, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. So these are two kingdoms that did not actually reign, but would have, that it just devours. So it conquers the two smaller kingdoms early, and we're going to get to that too, though when we do things like that, that's a little more speculative. There's no doubting what this empire is, however. But this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth. Not every being, no, but generally across the earth, with much oppression. That's a key word. And it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. Indeed it did. And after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. So we're looking for the largest empire, and it disappears from the world stage. Folks, this has already happened. Fast forward to chapter 12, the angel's interpretation, verse 23. In his last days shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms. The three heads, note it does not call them empires, so it matters not what they call themselves for political purposes. And renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion over the earth, and of those that dwell therein with much oppression, above all those that were before them. So they're larger than anything before. Therefore are they called the heads of the eagle. So let's break this criteria down from Ezra, and it reveals much. 25. For these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. The very end times. Now, we will get to Messiah's second coming after these heads, so this is well defined as end times by Ezra. You'll see. And whereas you saw that the great head appeared no more, it signifies that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. So we will find this actually as a defining moment for the end of this empire even. Ezra nails it. We are seeking out the largest empire which awakens in 1453. It lasts less than 529 years. We did the math. It rises close to the end. It rises from West Central Europe. This empire advances Gog's prophecy. Now this is huge, and a wow is coming on that, you'll see. It eats two feathers or kingdoms, then it disappears from world power. And Ezra even defines the end of its true rule by one ruler shall die upon his bed with pain. Wow. Let's do it. For this is firmly the British Empire. We'll show you why. Even history agrees the great head awakened. No, it wasn't called empire yet, but it awakened. That's a process of time. Now, when Britain defeated its largest rival for power is when it awakened. France, in the 100 Years' War, which ended, oh, would you look at that, 1453, the exact time the Byzantine Empire fell. In fact, it is said that the empire fell May 28th of that year after being conquered by the Ottomans. Now, the 100 Years' War is said to have ended 5 months later, October 19th. But let's be clear, Ezra says this great head really awakened, technically, on May 28th. See, Ezra's right. History doesn't necessarily always get it right. In fact, even scholars can agree on dates many times on rises and falls. Who cares? Let's go with what Ezra says, because he happens to be the prophet, and he's accurate. Let the historians debate their so-called ends of reigns. We're going to cover Ezra here, and his timeline as he saw it, and it is accurate. Regardless, same year, and this is amazing. Likely, France is one of the feathers this head eats. Now, that's speculation, but that would be a good guess. And the other is likely Scotland, though one could also say Ireland, perhaps. There are many to choose from, but those are the two really that led to its rise as an empire, so they make them the most sense to us. Again, we leave those open. We're not being firm on those. We don't need them. The great head has awakened in 1453, and it will become known as the British Empire. This really narrows this down, as the British Empire ruled 23% of the world population at that time. And yes, calculate that to today, and it still remains the largest. Even if some tried to inject China, they are only 18% of the world population today, so still not as large as the British Empire. Now, this empire was larger, no doubt. What about land? This empire swallowed 25% of the Earth's land mass as well. Wow! It is known as the largest on record in all of history, and that's not up for debate. This is the great head. In fact, let's take a look at the rise and fall of the British Empire from the time it really began to expand. Empires, again, are not born overnight. It awakened in 1453, period, according to Ezra, the prophet, who is accurate, and that actually fits history. There's a timestamp there. It began its ascent, however, as the largest world empire, really in the 1700s. Check out this animated map and history going along with it. This is awesome. Let's follow the rise and fall of the British Empire. We will begin to map this in 1707, where the empire really begins its full ascent, though it really began in 1453. The Acts of Union unite the kingdoms of England and Scotland under one rule, the United Kingdom. By then, the kingdom already has several colonies along the coasts of North America. As the years go by, settlements in North America increase as Britain moves westward. In 1757, the East India Company conquers Bengal, igniting Britain's advance into South Asia. Colonies in North America expand as the British Empire claimed victory over France in the 7 Years' War. Watch for the red as the expansion of Gog is underway. In the year 1783, the United States achieves victory in the American Revolutionary War, gaining independence from Britain, or so we're told. People from all continents begin falling to the empire as Britain achieves worldwide status as a superpower. Watch for the red as it continues to grow all over the world, spreading its seed to the Final Empire. You're seeing prophecy unfold before your eyes. The Constitution Act of 1867 formally unites all British colonies in Northern America into the Dominion of Canada. Again, watch for the red. Several European powers participate in the scramble for Africa, resulting in a major expansion for the British Empire. By World War I, Britain is established as a multi-continental empire with a population of over 400 million people. Following their victory in World War I, Britain acquires land from the former German colonies in Africa. From the Ottoman Empire, Britain takes control over Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, and Qatar, connecting their land in Africa to Asia. German New Guinea also fell under rulership of Britain, with its mainland territories being mandated under Australia. Following the Irish Revolution, we'll start to see the decline. Ireland is officially granted independence from the United Kingdom. In 1931, the Statute of Westminster is adopted in Canada and South Africa, giving them self-governance over their land. The following year, the Kingdom of Iraq is granted independence from the British Empire. In 1942, midway through World War II, Australia fully applies the Statute of Westminster, gaining self-governance. As a result of World War II, Britain officially receives land from the former Italian colonies of Somalia and Libya. Occupation zones are also set by the Allies, with Britain occupying parts of Germany and Austria. Over time, several colonies begin leaving and declaring independence as colonization starts coming to a close. This, my friends, is the Final Empire, its big head rise and fall. The occupation zones in Germany are brought together, and West Germany is established in 1949. Decolonization becomes rapid in the mid-20th century, with nations being formed across the entire globe. Watch the red as it's now receding to virtually nothing. There it goes, right before our eyes. Ezra's prophecy comes to life. And then the final nail. On the 1st of July, 1997, the United Kingdom hand over Hong Kong to China was the mark of the end of the British Empire. Ladies and gentlemen, Ezra was accurate with perfection. Wow, that was incredible. One could not ask for a more perfect fit to Ezra's prophecy. But what about carrying out the plans of Gog of Magog? You know, the demon, the prince demon that inhabits the body, the voice from within. This is going to raise the hairs on the back of your neck. Let's go to Ezekiel 38:8. Gog of Magog attacks. After many days, thou shalt be visited in the latter years. Now that's the end times, and we're there, folks. thou shalt come into the land, Israel, that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people, out of many nations, out of Gentiles. These are not lost tribes, folks. That is not who lived in Israel before this happened, nor is it who will inhabit Israel when it does, and we'll go there. Against the mountains of Israel, so it's definitely Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, the Goyim, the Gentiles. That's what that is in Bible terms. These are not lost tribes yet. They return in the story, for sure, definitively, in chapter 38, after Gog's forces are destroyed, which means they have not returned yet. Ooh. Oh yeah, we'll cover that. Ezra agrees. And they shall dwell safely, all of them. Now that's a clue. The Palestinians dwelt in safety before this empire, the British Empire, came in and conquered it in 1918. Now, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Indeed they did. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land. They sure did. Thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Now we'll review them in a minute on a map, and you'll see for yourself that it was in fact Gog of Magog and his forces who attacked Israel. Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. Indeed, he did, and this has already happened. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. Clue, when was Israel unwalled? As it was Palestine before 1918. Those walls have now been rebuilt, and Isaiah says that they would be by sons of strangers in the land. Those in Israel today are not Hebrews, but strangers in the land, according to Isaiah and Ezekiel. How about that? Now I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls. So we just repeated all of that. And having neither bars nor gates. In other words, these are the peaceful farmers of Palestine who were conquered by Britain or Gog of Magog in 1918. Wow, that must have been really hard for the British Empire, the largest empire on the world, to overtake those peaceful farmers who had no walls. Verse 12. To take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations. In other words, Goyim, Gentiles, inhabited Israel at that time. Not lost tribes. This is not Israel. In fact, it's even called Palestine, Roman name, which have gotten cattle and goods. They were peaceful farmers that dwell in the midst of the land. Sheba, Cebu, Philippines, which Messiah even prophesied would rise in the last days in Matthew 12:42. In fact, watch Solomon's Gold series. Don't even attempt to debate on this video. There's 100 plus videos. There's a 340-page book supported by a 300-page source book that proves that. So not even going to entertain that here on this video. And Dedan, now actually Dedan from Ham, makes no sense here, doesn't fit, couldn't possibly be the right interpretation. It has no association with Tarshish, nor this Sheba, which is the brother of Ophir, to which her story cannot be separated. There's two Shebas in the Table of Nations. Hello, scholars, didn't you know that? Watch Solomon's Gold series, we prove it. This is DDN in ancient Hebrew, which is Dodan, brother of Tarshish, not Dedan from Ham, which is nonsense. And the merchants of Tarshish, Philippines, specifically Mindanao, even Mapso in history. We prove it. Watch. with all the young lions. Now, this word, kafir, also means walled villages. And that, by the way, is a great description of the Philippines, who has walls everywhere. They're everywhere in that country. However, these young lions, well, they would represent Messiah, wouldn't they? He's the lion, as you'll see later in the same narrative. And they stand for him against Gog of Magog, the prince demon. So they're standing in righteousness with him, and that's why they're called young lions. It's certainly not Britain, who is Gog of Magog and is doing the attacking. That is illiterate and never Tarshish in Scripture. Watch. Thereof shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Now these three areas, which are all three the Philippines, will rise up and condemn Gog of Magog. And this will happen soon, in our time. You watch. It doesn't matter. No, we aren't prophets. Ezekiel's the prophet, and he said so. Now, it doesn't matter who is in power, as this isn't about a president, nor a prophet, nor is any one man going to do this, nor can they steal the prophecy of a nation. There is a church that does that, more than one actually. The nation will, and it will rise indeed. Watch that series, especially the prophecy video. Part 9, I think it is. Therefore, son of man, prophesy, and say unto Gog, Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, In that day when my people of Israel dwelleth safely, shalt thou not know it? In other words, if those were my lost tribes who would return there, living there, well, the ones that you just conquered, well, wouldn't we all be aware of that? Wouldn't you know it? Of course, Satan would, Gog would. They are not, however, nor are those who conquered it. Neither can possibly fit, yet the one claims it is, doesn't it? And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts. The British Empire and its allies of Gog. Yep, that fits. Thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army. Now, tanks, horses, same thing. And thou shalt come up against my people of Israel. No, the Palestinians are not his people. He just told us they were Gentiles. What Gog, Britain, will do is target the areas in which the lost tribes migrated. And that is fact. Now, this will become fully evident when we get to the lost tribes, whom we will cover later in this series, because Ezra goes there. Gog indeed targeted the three areas of lost tribes' migrations. As a cloud to cover the land, it shall be in the latter days, the end times, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. Again, Yahuwah and Yahusha will sanctify this land, and Gog's forces will be consumed and destroyed. If you read this further, 5/6 of modern Israel will perish, in fact. How do we know this? Notice the map of Gog and his allies. Compare it with the areas to the right in which the British Empire occupied over their reign. Britain is in the seat of Gog of Magog's power, which is not Russia, Magog, no, that's just where he was born or where he's from, but that's not a seat of power. That is Meshech, or West Europe, and Tubal is included, or Central Europe. Thanks to the mapping of the book of Jubilees, we firmly can identify this today. Watch Answers in Jubilees, parts 2 through 4 for that full mapping. Someone asked, well, how does Ethiopia get involved? Actually, Britain did control that area, but understand, When you see Ethiopia in the Bible, up until the 1800s, maps identify Ethiopia as east to west coast of Africa. Again, we cover that in our Answers in Jubilees series as well in the mapping. And we show you some maps in our Lost Tribes series. I think we show something like 20 maps that demonstrate this. Modern Ethiopia, though a small part of it, was known as Abyssinia, not Ethiopia. It was Ethiopia as part of a massive area, much, much larger than itself. It is Ethiopia, but a small piece in Bible history. Because again, that's all the way up to the 1800s. The Bible was written long before. Remember that. You see the secondary allies here, Persia, Ethiopia, and even Libya, were all controlled by this empire at one time. Then there is the area of Gomer, which includes his son Togarma, which is never Turkey. That's illiterate scholarship. Watch the mapping. Noah actually tells you where Togarma's from, which is Shem's son Lud in Turkey, by the way, not Japheth, and Togarma's from Japheth. It must be near Gomer, his father. Don't forget this land of Ashkenaz. Oh, you mean for Ashkenazi Jews. Britain did not control that land, but actually the other way around. Huh? The financial system in Britain was taken over by the Rothschild family by that time. That's not their name, you know. They are the Bowers. That's their real name. Ashkenazi Jews from Ashkenaz, or Gomer, and Togarma from the Russian steppes. They ran the British Empire financial system and its war engine principally. There is no separating them. In fact, they got filthy rich off of that, richer than anyone can imagine. And yes, this empire fully includes all of Gog of Magog's powers even. Wow. And don't forget, in the end, Yahuwah will send a fire down on Magog, or Russia, and also on the Isles. Those are the British Isles, this very seat of this great head. If you then take this mapping of Gog's territories, which identify within the British Empire, and compare to what is called the mass Aliyah, or the migration of, well, what you'll see is Gog into modern Israel from 1948 to 1952. This is very telling. From 1948 to 1952, we have what is called the mass Aliyah by the Jews, mostly Ashkenazi Jews, into modern Israel. They actually define this for us, and they don't even realize they condemn themselves. Notice where they came from to take over Palestine. 48% came from Gomer, Togarma, Ashkenaz. Oh, really? Wow, almost half. 28% from Tubal and Meshech. Wait, the seat of Gog of Magog's power? Really? With his bands of Gomer and Togarma. Now, 23% arrive from Persia, another Gog ally. Oh, wait, that's another Gog ally. What? This is just making too much sense. That's 99%. Oh, no, it's 100. Gog of Magog with Russia, or Magog, representing the final 1%. That's 100% accuracy in prophecy for Ezekiel, charted right there by the Jews themselves, who kept track that they are Gog. 100% Gog. But wait, Isaiah told us from where the lost tribes return. Let's look at what Isaiah says and compare. Isaiah 11 actually maps out 3 specific regions. No, not us. Isaiah did that. Which the lost tribes will return from. We will cover this later in the series in more detail. You can also watch our Lost Tribes series. These same 3 pockets are also where they migrated initially. Yes, they are scattered from there to the 4 corners of the earth. That is fact. And in fact, these actually are in every nation on earth today. But we can chart it. But they retain their identities with their homelands principally. So it doesn't change what Isaiah said. Central Africa or Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt for the southern kingdom, and Assyria or modern Kurdistan, and the Philippines, yes, we prove that indisputably and overwhelmingly, for the northern kingdom. Now, here's the problem. The mass Aliyah into modern Israel does not fit these territories of Isaiah's prophecy, the actual prophet, but they do fit Ezekiel's, but not of the lost tribes, but 100% Gog of Magog. What does that tell us? 14 out of 18 of these territories are wrong to Isaiah's prophecy. That is a problem. Modern Jews are not Hebrews. They are allies of Gog of Magog. This is calling Isaiah over 80% wrong in his own prophecy. Don't think so. This is Gog of Magog, not the return of the lost tribes, which has not happened yet in Scripture. So the world empire, the one from which the beast system will rise, can be followed with precision. We can know this. It started in Babylon, then Medo-Persia, to Greece, to Rome. Rome became something else in Turkey as the new Rome. Iron mixed with miry clay. That became the Byzantine Empire, the longest lasting empire according to Ezra and history as fact. Then the great head awakened and ruled almost 500 years, the British Empire, and it disappeared from the world stage as an empire. It lost its power. Wow. The British Empire is a perfect match to every one of these criteria, the largest in all of history, and it awakened in the right year of 1453, when the Byzantines fell. It lasted 499 years, and we'll nail that next, as far as date is concerned. Basically, it rose close to the end times indeed, and even toward its end, really, and from the seat of Gog's power, West Europe. It advances Gog's prophecy, specifically and especially attacking Israel, its main purpose for existing. Understand that. Understand how big that is, because we're talking Bible here. This is a big deal to the Bible. This was a very big deal that Ezekiel spent 2 whole chapters on this. It gave Israel to the Rothschild family in ownership in 1918 through the Balfour Declaration. Look it up. That was giving it to the Jews, the Pharisees, or better termed, the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Yahudim and are not, but do lie. Yes, same as the Catholic Church. They're one in the same. The Pharisees once lived in Israel. There's no doubting that. They were the replacements of the northern kingdom in Samaria. They were the Samaritans who infused the worship of Yahuwah into their pagan gods, such as the same one they call their god today by name, Hashem or Ashima in etymology. Same thing. Watch our Lost Tribes series. We cover that in great detail. They conquered the temple and usurped the priesthood in 165 BC in what they call the Hasmonean Revolt, which is actually... No, they conquered the temple. They replaced the temple priest with their own, usurping the authority of Yahuwah. Come on. This empire ate 2 feathers, likely France and Scotland, but you can speculate on those, fine. And it died in essence, but this last one, we believe, is even more specific. Check this out. The true end of the British Empire, the great head, is really defined by Ezra the prophet, far greater than any historian who can't agree anyway on such dates, so come on. The true end of its reign was 1952. This is when Queen Elizabeth's father died, and Ezra he called it right out. He died suddenly in his bed and painfully, exactly as Ezra predicted, for that is the end of the empire, 1952. And you'll see someone rose then. By the way, shout out to Kathy, one of our viewers who pointed this out in comments. Awesome, Kathy. Thank you. We have an exact match here, folks, in every way. Man, this is incredible. No wonder Gog and the World Empire don't want us reading this book of 2nd Esdras as well as 1st. It fully identifies them. Ouch! You also see why they have covered up the location of Ophir, Sheba, and Tarshish, as there it is. That's who will rebuke them, and that is coming whether they like it or not. Don't forget this channel operates out of that same area. So it's already started. The British Empire entrenches this entire narrative, in fact, as it also further proves the previous conclusions, as it rose the same year as the Byzantine Empire died. The longest empire. The next one, though, is going to strike many, possibly pretty hard. And let's just restore the truth here. We all must know where this leads. But that is for next week. We hope everyone was able to learn something from this video. Remember, we have over 320 videos on this channel, including some even translated and recorded in Tagalog. Go to our playlist, and a great start really is beginning in research with Solomon's Gold series, where we began, because it opens the floodgates, I assure you. Biblical geography is crucial to understanding prophecy, and it is part of a relationship with Yahuwah to learn, because you do realize he says multiple times, especially Hosea 4:6, "For my people perish from lack of knowledge. Let that not be you, my friend." Like and subscribe and friend us on Facebook at The God Culture, _space original. Our books are available on Amazon internationally and Shopee in the Philippines at ophirinstitute.com. We also have bookofjubilees.org and 2esdras.org. Thank you for watching. Yah bless to everyone. In 400 BC, the prophet Ezra predicted, "For my son Yahushua shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years." Essentially, 0 BC, the era Messiah was born, and by his very name, in exactness. "After these years shall my son Messiah die, and all men that have life." The origin of John 3:16. "And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the signs shall happen which I showed you before. And then shall my son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending." Even the end times are defined long before the book of Revelation. The Son of Elohim being confessed in the world. After 7 days, the world will be raised up. Mass resurrection of those who are asleep. The judgment seat. Evil will disappear. The Lion of Yehudah will consume the final empire, consuming his enemies with fire from his mouth. The lost tribes return. Every eye shall see him, handing out crowns and giving palms. The road to salvation is a narrow gate. Few are saved. The Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life are opened in the end. He is not willing that any should perish. The signs of the end times and origin of Matthew 24 in part. These are just some of the many prophecies in the book of 2nd Esdras, long before the book of Revelation was conceived. 2nd Esdras, written before John's revelation. This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw, and whereby you only are here lightened. For you have forsaken your own way, and applied your diligence unto my law, and sought it. That's Yahuwah speaking to the prophet Ezra. 2nd Esdras is dated at least 1st century BC, as it is used to interpret Habakkuk and blessing of the prince of the congregation, who is Messiah. This includes a radiocarbon dating testing as well of one fragment from 120 BC. We cover this in the introduction. This book includes 1st Esdras as well, which is also dated to the 1st century BC, when one examines what is called in fraud the Proto-Esther fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which do not remotely fit Esther, but are a match to 1st Esdras. We cover this in the introduction of this book, as well as on our YouTube videos on Esther in the original canon series. 2nd Esdras was quoted by Messiah according to the original authorized 1611 King James Version. Matthew 23, 37, and 38 is a direct quote from 2nd Esdras, which is anchored right there in the margin note as the origin of Messiah's words. For Esdras is 2nd Esdras, which we explain in the introduction. Yes, he quoted 2nd Esdras multiple times. When accurately dated, 2nd Esdras proves the origin of significant doctrine in the New Testament. We cover many such instances in the introduction. There is a reason why these two books remain in some Bible canons to this day. They test as inspired Scripture. Test them for yourself. Get your copy now, free in ebook. Again, this content is free. If you would like it in print, it is available on Amazon internationally and Shopee Philippines. Just go to 2esdras.org. Download the ebook, and the links are there for your area.